problem, and then so we'll continue on with the next application, which is on page 52, which is RU24/0675. Now this item will be recorded by a member of the public, as stated earlier. We also have public speaking on this item, and this item this evening will be introduced by Catherine Appleby. Are you there, Catherine?
Yes, I am. Thank you. Can everyone hear me?
I can hear you.
I'll just get the plans up.
Okay, great. Thank you. Right. Those slides are on the screen, Catherine, so the floor is yours.
Lovely, thank you. Members will recall considering proposals for the redevelopment of this site in 2018 under reference RU.171940. Outline planning permission was granted for the erection of up to 40 residential dwellings and associated vehicular and pedestrian access, drainage works and landscaping, including provision of public open space. This permission is extant. This current scheme is a full application proposing a development of 46 dwellings in a mix of 35 houses and 11 flats, including affordable housing, with pedestrian and vehicular access off Brox Road, together with drainage work and landscaping, including the provision of public open space, within the same red line area as the extant RU.171940, and now also incorporating land at 183 Brox Road, which will be demolished. I'm just going to take you through the plans. This is the site red line site plan. They've actually incorporated the part of the Brox Road just to show the visibility display and just the land that's involved in the planning application. And then the site plan next to it is just basically showing the site layout of the proposed scheme, which basically shows a mix of the houses to the north and east and west. And south mainly of the site, with the flat development predominantly in the middle of the site. This next slide is basically just showing a mix of the proposed houses and their styles. This is just kind of front elevation, so it shows some kind of the terrace properties and detached properties, and also the semi-detached properties. This next slide basically shows the front elevation of kind of the block, part of the block of the flatted development. So this would be the kind of western facing block of the flats, and it's just showing ground floor plan for the layout, which is basically that would be two flats on the ground floor, and then it's just showing a section at the bottom through the site. This is from the looking to the east, and it's showing the just the street scene elevation, just showing the flats and also the houses kind of either side. This is showing the other kind of rest of the block, flatted block, so basically showing the northern elevation of the kind of second part of the block. It's partly showing the kind of end elevation of that front elevation I just showed you, and then the kind of the rest of the block, and then a floor plan just indicating the again the kind of the different flats, mainly two flats on the ground floor. It's also showing part of the other first elevation I showed you, and then there's just a street scene at the bottom, which is facing looking towards the south, and it just shows the flatted scheme, and then also the terrace further to the east of that, the actual flatted block, and then a house at the end of that. And then this is just further street scene elevations. So the top street scene elevation is basically the kind of a mix of semi-detached properties, and that is looking north towards the southward road. And the other street scene elevation is basically the ones from looking north from Brox Lane. It's just a combination of kind of the detached properties. Actually follows if you look at the site layout, it's following kind of the whole kind of edge from kind of Brox Lane and that kind of the footpath along from the south there. And then this is the last illustrative view, which basically is just showing a view from the new access road from Brox Road, with the Annesley Cottage hidden behind the trees behind on the right, and also number 1818 Brox Road on the left, and then the entrance in, and in the distance you can see the kind of flatted block. And then the bottom left illustrative view is looking, and the back left you can see the flatted development, and then leading to some other detached, semi-detached properties on the left and the right. And then the final illustrative view is actually looking from the south, the southern corner of the site, and then just looking towards kind of more semi-detached properties. I'm just going to take you back to the start of the slides. The policy background is summarised at 6.2 of the report, recognising that site has been reserved as a future housing site in successive development plans since 1993. The Runnymede 2030 local plan was adopted on the 16th of July 2020, and the policy SD2 states that sites listed within this policy are expected to deliver the level of development subject to comply with SIP 5 is also a material consideration in the determination of this current application, as it was dismissed purely in respect of the timing of the release of the site. In relation to the density, the inspector concluded that the density suggested on the illustrative plan, showing 48 units, would amount to an efficient and acceptable use of land, and he concluded that, with careful design and full regard to living conditions of the occupiers of existing dwellings, I see no reason why an acceptable detailed layout for up to 48 dwellings could not be achieved. A maximum number of 46 dwellings is proposed on this site, representing a reduction in the number of units previously proposed, and found in principle to be acceptable on the site under RU.070895. It is therefore considered the quantum, design and layout of the proposed development would be consistent with the varied densities and the established character and appearance of the surrounding areas. In addition, the proposed development would provide a mix of units in accordance with policy SL19, and is considered that the development provides acceptable amenity within the site and would not harm existing amenities. Concerns have been raised regarding the impact of proposed development on nearby locally listed buildings and nationally listed buildings, and especially from the new access drive. However, it's not considered that the proposed development would have a harmful impact on their setting for the reasons summarised in 6.12 of the report. This is further reinforced by comments from the Council's Conservation Officer, which are set out on the addendum. The report sets out a summary of the representations received for this current application, and additional representations are set out on the addendum. The report also summarises the response received from statutory consultees, none of whom raise objection. Access is to be provided from Brox Road, which the County Highway Authority has advised can accommodate the quantum of development proposed in terms of highway capacity and highway safety. The applicant has also agreed to a condition to ensure there's no direct access, either vehicular or pedestrian, from the application site onto Southwood Avenue, Brox Lane, footpath 21 or footpath 30, other than that shown. Other technical matters have been fully addressed or can be dealt with by conditions. The applicant has agreed the provision of 35% affordable housing and contributions towards education and provision of SANG and SAM in respect of the Thames Basin Heath Special Protection Area via proposed Section 106 agreement. The application complies with the relevant policies in the development plan and the MPPF, and it is recommended for approval subject to conditions as set out on pages 65 to 72 of the agenda and amendments as set out on the addendum. Thank you, Chairman.
Chairman, you're still on mute.
My apologies. Thank you ever so much, Catherine, for your presentation there. Councillor Chowdhury, I notice your hand is up. Is there something that you need to say urgently, or can we move on with the representations from both the objector and the agent?
No, my apologies. I'll wait for the end of representations. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Chowdhury. Okay, so as stated earlier, we do have public speaking on this item. So if I can kindly ask Mr. Jim Nichol, on behalf of the Brox End Nursery Residents Association. Mr. Nichol, if you're there.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can, Mr. Nichol. You are loud and clear. As I'm sure it's been explained to you, and you've probably heard previously, you have 5 minutes. You'll be warned at 4.5, and your 5 minutes will start from the moment you commence speaking. So if you're ready to go, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman. I am Jim Nichol, Chair of Brox End Nursery Residents Association. Brox End Nursery, or BEN as we call it, has troubled Ottershaw since it was released from the Greenbelt in 1986, 34 years ago. We appreciate that BEN is suitable for some housing, and BENRA, with almost 500 supporters, was formed to help secure that goal of appropriate development. To emphasise that point, we should remind you that in 2017, an appropriate application received 240 letters of support from residents, only to have it refused. Now, here we are again tonight trying to fight off another very inappropriate application. So last year, the applicant speculated by purchasing the detached house at 183 Brox Road. Why speculative? Because since 1986, up to recently, Surrey County Highways, planning inspectors and this council have all reported and recorded access to BEN anywhere off Brox Road will be dangerous because a safe junction could not be made. The only access would be via Brox Lane. You have heard already of the material importance of the planning history of this site. So too should the advice offered about access also be carried forward. That would reveal all previous applications and assessments of build quantum have been based on an entirely different access. This includes your local plan 2030. Tonight you are deciding on a completely new project. New access changes everything. In spite of increase in traffic and speeds along Brox Road, highways now indicate their hands are tied and direct access from Brox Road is okay. However, in their report to you, they state that crossroads are not usually safe when made on a through road with traffic at high speed. Brox Road is a busy through road, wrap-run relief road for the A320, and speeds can be very high. The January 2020 Highways report revealed over 1/3 of vehicles using Brox Road exceed 30 miles an hour, and in some cases in excess of 80 miles an hour. This is reality. We leave it to this committee to decide if it is actually okay and safe to make a new crossroads, particularly on a bend. Heritage assets. The proposed access via a new, busy new road through 183 Brox Road into a crammed development of 46 houses and flats is very wrong. At least 140,000 traffic movements along it per year, and all just a few feet away from Anningsbury Cottage. It will have a truly negative effect on one of the few genuine heritage assets we have left in Ottershaw. I know many of you here tonight have visited the site and may appreciate the damage an overdeveloped estate can do to a small community and our heritage asset. This council's own policies EE3 and EE8 are blatantly being contravened by this proposal, and residents are extremely perplexed to note that presumably the RBC Conservation Officer who suggested that cottage should be locally listed is now, in his late report, allowing it to be violated by damaging its setting. The cottage will be transformed into a traffic island by this proposal, and the contribution made by its setting will be significantly reduced forever. The application does not deny this. According to RBC local plan, our council is supposed to ensure an application will protect, conserve and enhance the significance and value of these heritage assets and their settings. Design and density. We ask, does this council want another Strawberry Fields? Because all the ingredients are there. A single access road to very dense housing and flats, narrow internal roads, small or no gardens, far too few parking spaces. What is the point of counting a garage as a parking space? So in reality, just 72 spaces for 126 beds on site, and that's not counting the requirements of visitors. Presumably, Strawberry Fields followed the RBC planning policies as well, so we can expect the same result here. We ask you to be strong tonight and respect reality. RBC policy EE1, is being breached because by no stretch of the imagination is this a good, high-quality design contributing positively to making it greater for people. It does not reinforce locally distant patterns of development by paying particular regard to scale, mass, density, and bulk. It's 230% more dense than the average density around it. And Greenbelt, no respect has been, for the site's Greenbelt boundary has been shown at all. Two-storey housing and garages are to be built within 1 metre of the Greenbelt boundary. We hope you have a policy to stop that. Why have we ended up here? The applicant has not engaged sufficiently with the local community. The applicant was reluctant to hold an exhibition and only delivered invitations to a tiny minority of local residents.
Mr. Nick, I'm going to have to ask you to stop there, I'm afraid. I've allowed you to run slightly over the 5, but I am going to have to stop you there. I do apologise.
Can I just summarise my intention? We're urging the committee to refuse this application and ask the applicant to come back with a significantly improved proposal to provide housing that will enhance our community and win the hearts of the residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Chairman.
Thank you very much. Thank you. If I could now ask the representative from the applicant. Just bear with me. Is Mandy Owen? Are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can indeed. As before, you have 5 minutes. You'll be warned at 4.5. And if you're ready to go, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Mandy Owen and I'm from Boyer, the planning consultant for the application. A2 Dominion, the developers, have a proven track record as a housing association who deliver private and affordable housing across London and the South East. A2 Dominion will retain the site in perpetuity and will be responsible for managing the affordable housing, estate roads and landscaped areas. A2 Dominion are proposing a policy compliance scheme for 46 high-quality homes, including 16 affordable units, on a site which is allocated within the local plan for a minimum of 40 homes. It is important to note that there is an existing outline planning consent for 40 homes on the site. Compared to that outline consent, this proposal provides an additional 4 homes within the main part of the site and an additional 2 homes on land at 183 Brox Road. A2 Dominion have owned this site since 2010, and as set out in the committee report, there is a protracted planning history on the site. A planning application was submitted for 40 homes, but was withdrawn in July 2017 following meetings with the Residents Association. An application for 12 homes was then submitted, which gained the support of local residents, but was refused at committee as it failed to provide an effective use of land. The application for 40 homes was then resubmitted and approved at committee in 2018. This demonstrates that A2 Dominion have consistently tried to work with local residents to deliver housing on this site. Through the Outline Planning Commission, access was approved along Brox Lane, a private road. We are aware that there were concerns regarding this access, and the Brox Lane Residents Association did not give consent for access for more than 25 homes, which was contrary to policy and would therefore be unacceptable to Runnymede Council. Therefore, the application before you today proposes an alternative access from Brox Road rather than Brox Lane. Technical work has demonstrated that the access is safe, and Surrey County Council have confirmed that it is acceptable. The proposed development is therefore an improvement on the consented scheme. The proposed layout has been carefully designed and considered to reflect the surrounding area. For example, the detached properties on site sit adjacent to the detached properties on Brox Lane, and the semi-detached homes sit adjacent to the semi-detached homes on Southwood Avenue. There is a higher density in the centre of the site in the form of an apartment block, but this is set away from neighbouring properties so to limit any impact on them. We've worked closely with your officers and are delighted that the application has been recommended for approval. There are no outstanding objections to the application from consultees. Simultaneously, A2 Dominion have met the Brox Lane Residents Association and Brox End Nursery Residents Association a number of times. These meetings date back years. In recent times, A2 Dominion have met with the Residents Association prior to the pre-application submission, pre-submission of the application, and at least twice since. As a result of discussions with the officers and the ongoing engagement with the Residents Association, there have been a number of changes to the scheme, as set out in the committee report. Initial concerns were raised about the apartment building in the centre of the site, stating that it is too large and too bulky. These comments were addressed, and the apartments before you have been split into two buildings separated by the bin store. The height has been reduced by 750 millimetres and is now comparable with the height of surrounding houses. The elevations of the apartment buildings and all of the houses have also been refined through the application process to include decorative details. As you have heard, there are concerns raised regarding the impact of the development on the locally listed building, Ainsley Cottage. However, Catherine Appleby has clearly addressed this in her speech tonight and in her addendum, and you will have seen the Council's Conservation Officer comments. A draft Section 106 has been prepared by the Runnymede legal team, which will secure financial contributions amounting to nearly £500,000. This is clear from the committee report. This site is allocated for a minimum of 40 units in the local plan, and the application has been subject to consideration by your officers, County Council, statutory bodies and local stakeholders. We are pleased that your officers have recommended this policy compliance scheme for permission.
So you have 30 seconds left.
Thank you, and respectfully request that you resolve to grant planning permission in line with their recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mandy Owen, there for your representation and presentation. Members of the committee, you've heard the presentation from the officer. You've heard from both the objector and the applicant, and I now throw it open to the floor for further debate and discussion. And I notice, Councillor Chowdhury, you have your hand up first, so the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman, and my sincere apologies for logging in late. I had a minor family emergency, and apologies for that. I'm afraid I have a big problem with this application.
Chairman?
Yes.
Can I just clarify with Councillor Chowdhury whether he was present for the whole of the...
Not the whole of it, but I know the background very, very well.
Yeah.
And I've studied the paperwork very, very well, so I was there for most of the debate.
Okay, well, if I may just refer you to the Constitution at page 303, and I appreciate you may not have it in front of you. Paragraph 10.4 requires that you do not take part in the debate or take part in the vote of an application where you haven't been present for not only the officer presentation but also the debate itself. So I think if you've missed the debate, if you've missed the officer representation, then you shouldn't take part in the debate at all.
I mean, I was there for the officer representation, and as I said, I know the background of this extremely well, being a ward councillor.
Okay, well, if I've misinterpreted that and you have been there from the beginning,
I wasn't there from the beginning, but I was there for the majority of the debate.
Mr. Chair,
okay, Councillor Kisneratis, I know what you're going to say. Just bear with me. If we can just clarify, please, Councillor Chowdhury, did you hear the entire officer's report on this item?
Not the entire.
Okay, that's a clear answer there. Emmanuel, can I please have your ruling on whether or not Councillor Chowdhury can actually take part in the debate and the vote?
Yeah, the Constitution confirms that he shouldn't take part in the debate or the vote.
Okay, well, I think unfortunately, Councillor Chowdhury, that is clear. Hands are tied on this. The Constitution says what it says.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, if you weren't there for the entire presentation, then unfortunately you are unable to take place in the debate or the vote.
Okay, Chairman, I respect that. But it was a family emergency, so apologies for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Cressy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. As one of the other ward councillors, I'm keenly aware of the strength of feeling from residents concerning this proposed development. There's only a couple of things I really would like to comment on, if you don't mind.
Please do.
I think the first is the density of housing. If you use the average density of neighbouring properties, it would mean that you would develop around about 20 or so houses on the site rather than 46 that is being proposed. In other words, that's about a 230% increase in density than the surrounding area. My conclusion to this is it's out of keeping with the neighbouring area. My second point is the traffic island that is just about being created around Anningsley Cottage. Anningsley Cottage was built in 1764, and it's probably the third or fourth oldest property in Ottershaw. There are around about 470 odd heritage sites in the borough, of which only 4% are in Ottershaw Ward. I think that works out about 20. It doesn't make the site more or less important. It's just that the heritage sites are a rarity in Ottershaw, and we should be trying to protect them wherever we can. The local plan identifies the following as included as heritage sites. It's listed building and locally listed buildings, amongst others. So there is no differentiation. I think it's just the weight that you put onto these different categories of listed buildings, or heritage assets rather. The proposed access road and associated traffic volumes will adversely impact on the amenity of this asset, and it will also damage the setting of the asset. I could go into great detail but regarding heritage, but really at the end of the day, suffice to say that paragraphs 733 to 735 of the local plan are relevant, and I just want to pick out a few words which are used in those particular paragraphs. For example, heritage sites or heritage assets are a finite resource and an irreplaceable asset. A general presumption in favour of their preservation. We should afford them considerable weight in determining if a proposal is acceptable, and all new development should seek to conserve and enhance. So even though you may have a heritage site which you lend less weight to in your consideration, it should still conserve and enhance the existing heritage site. Chair, that's all I'd really like to say for now, but with your permission, I hope you'll allow me to speak a little later once other members have a chance to comment.
Councillor Cressy, thank you ever so much for your comments on the application thus far. At this stage, okay, we've got another hand up. Councillor Sylvia White, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of things on this one. I noticed from the photographs that were shown at the beginning, or mock-up of what it's going to look like, there were trees around Anningsley Cottage. Are those trees there at the moment, can anyone tell me? Or will they have to be replanted? Because obviously they were quite mature trees. So if there's not going to be any trees there from the beginning, it's going to take quite a long time for them to surround the cottage, if you like, to sort of protect it. So that's my first question. And the other one was the objector talked about the speed of traffic along Brox Road. And I don't know whether there's been, and obviously Surrey County Council haven't thought that was a problem, but there is a possibility, I assume, at some stage, not obviously it's a planning issue, but to put some traffic calming along the road once everything has been approved. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor White. Let's see if we can get some clarification with regard to the trees that you've mentioned around Anningsley Cottage. Could I ask Ashley Smith, are you there? Are you fielding the question with regard to the trees, or are we reversing to Catherine Appleby?
I am indeed here, Chair. If I need assistance from Catherine Appleby, I will ask for assistance. The trees are already there on the site. There is a suggestion there's additional hedgerow planting would be developed along the along the side and on the road, which was shown on the indicative drawing Catherine displayed. Councillor White is correct that traffic calming could be considered in the future. It's a separate issue from the planning application and would be an issue for the county highway authority to consider, but it would be within their gift if appropriate. However, they have deemed the access to be safe and therefore they have not required any special mitigation to be put forward. And at the end of the day, that is their call. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith, for those clarifications. Can I just confirm, Councillor White, that you're looking to come back in on any points that you've raised, or you're satisfied?
No, I'm okay at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have a hand up from Councillor Linda Gillan. Councillor Gillan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman. Like others, I've visited this site and I acknowledge the depth of opinion from the local residents. It is indeed they are very well represented. I think after so many years, I mean, this piece of land came out of the Greenbelt something like 30 years ago, I understand, and after so many planning applications, this is a very complicated piece of planning before us tonight. We're constrained by the fact that the Highways Authority have not objected to this new access, and whilst I recognise the residents are very concerned about it, it is going to be difficult to argue against without the County Highways Authority backing any objections. We're also constrained by the previous consents and inspectors' reports in terms of density and numbers, and so those two concerns, which are very strong in the minds of residents, are going to be very difficult for us to address. One thing I am not really happy with is the flats. I don't think that the design is in keeping with the local area. In my drive around today, I failed to see any other flats, but I think this is perhaps something to do with the policy of build, build, build. We're seeing more and more flatted developments coming into our semi-rural areas. In recognising the concern around Enningsby Cottage and Arden, I'm pleased to see that the addendum says that there will be more planting along their boundary. I think that the only way we're going to be able to protect this locally listed asset is to protect it with vegetation. And I'm pleased to see that some's been recommended, but I would urge that it's very carefully thought out, because this is an excellent opportunity to increase the biodiversity if there are native species planted. This is not going to be an easy decision, because I recognise it's the strength of the residents' objections, but I do feel that we are very constrained, and after so many years, it's time that some certainty is brought to this area. Thank you.
Councillor Gillan, thank you ever so much for your comments and thoughts there. If I could now invite Councillor King, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Gillan sort of stole my thunder on a number what I was going to say there. Like others, I've also visited the site, and the road was a particular concern, particularly for me and Councillor White on the day. We saw the speed which traffic was going along the road there, and it would be particularly concerned for young families. It's a disappointing scenario we find ourselves in, really, with the representations made by County Highways, because we are going against the authority, obviously, on that ruling if we were to make that decision tonight, which wouldn't stand before a planning inspector. It's pleasing to see the remaining trees on the site are obviously going to be preserved, and also, obviously, the applicant is going to make substantial contributions not only to our fill, but also to development of hedgerows, which are very important, obviously, as Councillor Gillan has mentioned, for biodiversity. I still remain on the fence, open to the debate here, although I would say it's welcome to see affordable housing, particularly in that side of the borough.
Councillor King, is that you finished?
It is, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Okay, once again, thank you for your comments on that. We've got Councillor Snow, followed by Councillor Howard, and then Councillor Ottershaw. So, Councillor Snow, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you very much indeed. I have spent quite a few hours considering this project. as a person that lived not 200 yards from Brox Lane for a number of years, it is something that has been dear to my heart. There are a couple of things that I would like to bring up. Okay, the first one is about the character of the actual scheme. I'm looking at the MPPF and I'm looking at 127 section C, and it says the planning policies and decisions should ensure that developments are sympathetic to the local character and history, including surrounding built environment and landscape settings, while not permitting or discouraging appropriate innovation or change, such as increase of densities. So I get from that is that I understand that we have to maximise the land that we've got. Okay, I get that. Okay, what I don't get is when you look at this scheme could be anywhere. It has no character whatsoever in relation to Ottershaw. And that's the most disappointing part of this whole scheme for me. I recognise that there must be a scheme. I recognise that. But when I look at these houses, they can be anywhere but Ottershaw, as far as I'm concerned, as far as there is no real thought. I'm sorry if that's my opinion, okay? And I know it's not about opinion, it's about policy. I would also like to go on and just raise one other point. We had a very eloquent speech the other night at full council by Councillor Marissa Heath regarding the emergency climate strategy. So I've looked at this scheme and looked at the types of materials that they wish to use. And most of the materials on this site are brick, blocks, tiles, etc. And most of these items really produce the most greenhouse gases, okay? And yet when I go into the access and design and access statement, it tries to tell me that it's a sustainable design and construction, and it gives me a nice little schedule out of energy conservation, water conservation, materials, surface water, waste, pollution, heat, health and well-being management, and ecology. But when I actually delve into things, most of what they've provided are the minimum. Okay, if we are, as councillors and as running the borough council, actually going to stand by our emergency climate strategy, then it's incumbent upon planning members to take our responsibilities as well. And we need to understand that materials that are being used on new sites need to look at their carbon footprint. Okay, this site will have gas on it. We know in 2025 that gas will no longer be used. This is all short-sighted. And I just am bitterly disappointed regarding the way that this design has been put forward. I recognise that this is a site, and I recognise our decision will be made on policy. But I just want to start us as councillors backing up Marissa Heath regarding her policies on emergency climate strategy. I know many of us have concerns, and this is the time that we need to start using those. But we need to do this prior to these applications getting to us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Snow, for your thoughts, feelings and comments on that. I've got a hand up from Ashley Smith. I think looking to come back on a couple of points raised there. So just before I move on with further councillors, if I could just invite Mr. Smith, please, to come back on some of those comments.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Snow obviously hit the nail on the head, really. This is about planning policy and what is acceptable, and this planning committee is sitting in an application determination capacity rather than a policy formation capacity, and unfortunately our policy says one thing. We can't apply different standards to one particular scheme than any other scheme. We've approved dozens of schemes in this last year and haven't helped them to a different level of account. And so, I would be cautioning against making up planning policy on the fly, because that's not what we're here to do. We need to determine applications on the policy basis, and there is no policy requirement to go above and beyond for this scheme, beyond any other scheme that we consider. The application, as we've heard earlier on tonight, with regards to the character issue, it sits in a relatively isolated field and can establish its own character. Again, there is nothing incumbent in the housing allocation policy that delivers a particularly higher requirement on this scheme to go beyond the mixed character of Ottershaw. Policy SL2 does not elaborate in that way. But what it does do is, under Part A, make provision for a minimum of 40 net additional C3 dwellings. It's already had permission for 40 previously. It's abundantly clear from anyone who reads the appeal decision it would have got permission for more than 46 if it wasn't for an in-principle objection to the development, which wasn't character or design-led. And so the scheme is an appropriate density by in planning considerations, really, given the history of it, given the site allocation, and the quite frankly vast amount of time this site has been earmarked for housing. I don't really see any reasonable grounds that we can that objection on those grounds could be sustained. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith, for coming back on that. Councillor Snow, you have your hand still up. Are you looking to come up on any of those points at all?
Yes, please, Chairman.
Okay.
I accept fully what Ashley Smith has just said. But when I look at documents that are provided, they look very good, they look very comprehensive, but they state that there are things like sustainability development strategies within these documents. They're not there. If people are going to put things in documents to try and promote that they are providing a sustainable site, and sustainable just doesn't mean it's local, okay, and that the materials they're selecting are, I quote, rated at A to C, then tell me, show me, because everything I see on this site just shows high carbon footprint to me, okay, and as I've studied this subject, I understand it, and I'm just unhappy with that, especially after, as a council, we are promoting very strongly and trying to show our residents that we believe in emergency climate strategy. We don't play at it, we believe in it. And as a planning committee, we need to incorporate this in applications that come before us. I believe it may be too late tonight, but I want to highlight it. Okay? We either are doing it or we're playing at it. And I want to back Councillor Marissa Heath, and I'm sure most of us want to as well. So that's my comment on that, but I fully accept what Ashley Smith has said. Thank you very much, and thanks for the time.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Excuse me. Thank you very much, Councillor Snow. Again, forgive me, councillors, but I've got a hand up again from Ashley Smith looking to come back, I believe. So, Mr. Smith, are you there?
I am. Just very briefly, I completely respect, obviously, Councillor Snow's position on it. If there is an ambition for different standards to be pursued, it's not an issue for this planning committee tonight, but it is something that could be pursued through working groups or the revision to, or the refresh of the local plan. Those are the correct forums for it, and I simply wanted to signpost that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Ashley Smith, for those clarifications from yourself. If I can move on to Councillor Howarth and then Councillor Orenshaw. Councillor Howarth.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll try to be brief, as I'm sure I want to come back later as well. But I know impassioned speeches from Residents Association in challenge to this development, but no, also a requirement within the local plan for at least 40 properties or residences on this site. So I difficult to see how one avoids a development. I then note Councillor Snow's point about the nature of the actual development, and indeed the objector raised the same point on whether or not the property is in keeping. But note also Councillor Snow's wording, which was this could be anywhere, and therefore I wonder whether anywhere could be here. So the things that concerned me on this particular application were the heritage asset building, and then I came to thinking that arguably this development might make the heritage asset building more visible and therefore accessible to more of the population by having removed the house that currently sits behind it. So in some ways there might be a benefit, but I wondered about shielding and landscaping around that building. And I note that there are comments in the recommendations that would deal with that. I then move on to the points being made about environment. And note recommendation 19. Prior to the first occupation of development, details of chosen renewable energy sources, and this paragraph goes on to say that 10% of the energy should be low carbon use. So I would submit that there is actually some attention being paid to renewable energy and that climate emergency which we've just had our attention drawn to. But what does concern me is vehicle charging points. We've had discussions in this committee before about the number of vehicle charging points, and we have a very long agenda, so I do apologise if I've missed a statement. I do see an informative about electric charging as being the responsibility of the developer to ensure that the electricity supply is sufficient, but I don't see exactly how many charging points would be in place, and I believe that our policies would actually require that there should be one per house and then a percentage for the apartments. Can officers guide me as to how many charging points are actually being proposed in this proposal in front of us?
Thank you very much, Councillor Howarth, for a very clear question with regard to EV charging points. 20% seems to ring a bell with me, but let me just bring in Mr. Smith there for clarification as with regard to requirements for EV charging points. Mr. Smith, are you there?
I am, Chair. Correct, Councillor House. You're doing my job for me. It's exactly right what you said. The condition here requires one EV charging point per dwelling house, and that 20% of the flats be provided with EV charging points, which is entirely in line with the Surrey standards. So that is correct. I'd also like to comment on Councillor Howard's commentary with regards to the heritage asset. That is entirely correct as well. That things that can lead to the appreciation of an asset can be seen as a benefit. The existing modern house adjacent to it contributes little to nothing to the setting of that building, and so it is partly for that reason that the Conservation Officer has no objection to it. But I entirely agree with Councillor Howard's point about increased prominence could in fact be a benefit rather than a disbenefit in heritage terms. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith, for those clarifications. I'll just check with Councillor Howarth that that's tied up your questions for now.
It has, thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Right, if we could now hear, please, from Councillor Ottershaw, as we've not heard yet from him this evening. Councillor Ottershaw, are you there?
Yes, I am, Chair. Thank you very much. As I'm not a sitting member of the committee, I would just like to say that the residents, as the ward councillor, along with Mr. Cressin and IFTI as well, that the residents are not totally against development. It's the volume and the density and all the things that go around it. I mean, we have at this precise moment in time got the A320 going on in front of us, and it's a very important factor. Once that is decided how that goes, there are more opportunities in this village to be explored rather than stick 40 units in a small field in the middle of the village. So that's another night. And all I would like to say is that we do not want to have in-building going and making us merging with Rowtown and all that sort of thing with all these buildings going to be coming on. So I would prefer to defer, it's my opinion only. Time is on our side, and if we don't take this opportunity to shrink the development and make it more local and then do whatever they want to do elsewhere, as Councillor Snow said, it's not elsewhere, there are places in the village. So I just think we should think about this very carefully, because I know it's a very important thing and it could lead to damage in the village in the future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Orenshaw, for your thoughts and comments. I've got a hand up again from Mr. Smith, so if I could just bring Mr. Smith in, please, as a response to the comments there from Councillor Orenshaw. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to clarify that this is a local plan allocated site. It is part of our spatial strategy for the next 10 years. The ship has well and truly sailed on whether or not this site is developed and whether the site is developed for a minimum of 40 dwellings. So just to clarify Councillor Orenshaw's point, there is no justifiable ground that we can seek alternative sites as an alternative to this. It is going to happen in terms of the site being developed. It is part of our strategy, and we can't reasonably look at other sites. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Orenshaw, your hand's gone straight back up. Are you looking to come back?
Yes, please, Chair. Thank you. It's not the fact it can't happen, it's the density of what's going to happen, and it should be put into the village area, Upper says, how much. So we need to shrink it. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Orenshaw. Councillor Sohi, you have your hand up and you've been very patient. My apologies, Councillor Sohi.
Thank you, Chair. So with regards to this site, I think that my main concern with the application is with regard to the locally listed building, which is very much going to be isolated due to this development. So I'm not sure how much weight that carries in this case, but do officers not feel that isolating this particular house has a detrimental impact? In terms of the density question, I think that's already been answered by Mr. Smith. I do feel that the new access is inappropriate due to the speed on the main road, but unfortunately this does sit under the remit of County Council's highway team, and therefore without them raising concerns, it does make it very difficult for us to pursue this point. In terms of the character of the development, I guess this very much comes down to personal opinion as to whether or not it's appropriate and whether that's a strong enough case to not allow a development where the outline has already been approved. So I guess really what I'm trying to say is I do have sympathy with the residents who are objecting to this application. From my perspective, I'm looking for concrete policies where this application falls short. I will continue to listen to the debate, but I am interested to know the officer's opinion on the isolation of the heritage building, please. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sohi. So the concerns there, you've heard Mr. Smith with regard to the locally listed assets. Can we just have the officer's opinion on the harm or the not harm as far as the report is concerned?
Indeed, Chairman. Councillor Cressy has already flagged paragraphs 7.34, 7.35 in the local plan, but 7.36 obviously carries on to state that the consideration of a heritage asset has to be proportionate to its significance and an appropriate balance to be achieved. Personally, I'm not, as a planning professional, worried about the isolation of that building. As I said previously, I probably would support the view advanced by Councillor Howard that it increases the depreciation of that building. But I'm not a qualified conservation officer. The conservation officer has assessed it and does not consider that it would cause any particular problems to this development. And indeed, those houses surrounding it have sprung up since its creation as an asset in the first place. The other thing I would say is that whilst our local plan policies do seek to protect heritage assets, the harm here, if there is any, which I don't think there is very limited, and a local listing doesn't actually provide additional planning controls as set out on Historic England's advice. It's simply something that we consider during the planning application process. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. Councillor Sohi, can I just confirm that clarifies and you're happy with the response with regard to your question?
I am, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's have Councillor Cressy, please, if you could like to take the floor.
Thank you, Chair. It's very kind of you to let me come back. One of the things that I'm hearing is that there is some uncertainty and a bit of worry, and hopefully this debate has actually gone to help clarify it to some extent. For me, however, I have to say that overall I'm still very concerned about this site, and I am particularly concerned about the heritage site, as Councillor Sohi had mentioned earlier. I do believe that in actual fact that it is clear that whilst I do accept what Ashley says about you have different grades, if you like, or perhaps not different grades. You've got all heritage sites have an equal are equally a heritage site. It's just how much weight you put on each particular one, and I think that's the important issue there. For me, and I just want to reiterate it, Ottershaw does not have a lot of heritage sites, and this is probably one of the 3 or 4 oldest properties within the whole of Ottershaw. So I do recognise that it is an important site, and I do, in my own opinion, place quite a lot of weight on it. I would also say that we should be recognising the fact that there should be development on this site. I don't think there's any doubt from anybody that residents alike, I think everyone understands there should be development, but there is a strength of feeling out there which is very strong, and that strength of feeling for me demonstrates that there has been a lack of proper, true collaboration between the developer and the affected neighbourhood. So from my point of view, I think the best way forward is to perhaps consider deferring this matter to make sure that the members of the community and the developers can get together and actually work through all of these issues. There's been a lot of issues being picked up, and I have to say that I appreciate all of the issues and concerns and insights shown by all of the councillors. It really is, for me, it's really hitting the heart. That everyone has obviously put in a lot of effort in looking at this, and I do think that there's a lot more that could be done to make this site a lot better, and maybe the way forward is to demonstrate to the developers that we want the developer and the local representatives of the community to get together and work through this to make something better for everybody. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cressy. If I could ask Councillor Anderson-Bassey, please. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to make something very clear and back up the advice that Ashley has given us. Time and again, the point has been raised about the development and density on this site. We have no planning grounds whatsoever to turn this down on density. It was previously turned down by this very committee for a lower density site of 25, as the officers have reminded us. There's an existing application, granted, permissioned, RU 17 1940, for erection of 40 dwellings. And on the recent appeal decision, the inspector himself advised that it would be easily acceptable to have 48 dwellings on this site. This is in our local plan and was a site with a minimum of 40 dwellings. We're looking here at a very few more additional dwellings above that minimum. And remember, that's a minimum. This site has been specifically chosen and approved in our local plan by this very committee to develop for that minimum. So I just want to make that very clear. If anybody wants to try and reject this application on the basis of density, we have absolutely zero grounds. It would go to appeal and we would lose instantaneously. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Anderson-Bassey, for your opinion on that. If I could now ask Councillor Broadhead, please, then followed by Councillor Halley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
I can. You're loud and clear.
Oh, that's good. I've been watching this site for quite a number of years now, at least for 20 years, to my knowledge, and I agree with a lot of what my fellow councillors talk about, especially Councillor Sowie and her comments. However, with regard to the protected assets that we have on the corner, which they talk about an island being created, there is already around this site a lot of hedgerows, a lot of trees, and from the road, if you drive down from the Woking direction towards the Ottershaw centre, if you blink, you would miss this asset. It's not as if it stood out as it is at this moment in time, and therefore, with additional screening, we won't see it at all. A number of my colleagues are worried about the density, and we've just been explained by our Deputy Chairman about the grounds regarding the numbers. I'm totally in agreement with what he says. If we reject this application, we will be shot down. And I don't think there is any way that we could possibly reject it and bring it back at a later date because of these observations that I've made already. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Broadhead, again for your thoughts and comments. If I could have Councillor Snow as a member of the committee, and then we'll hear from Councillor Halley up. Councillor Snow.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for letting me come back. I just would like to answer some of the points that Councillor David and Anderson-Bassey raised and Councillor Broadhead. I can feel in the back of my head Jim Nicholl screaming at us. And I think the point that Mr. Nicholl was putting forward was that, yes, he agrees that all these applications have gone through the process, have in essence been approved, or they were at the wrong timing when they came forward. But I know what he's thinking. He's saying that all these applications were based on access coming from Brox Lane. Okay? I'm putting that out there. I'm not suggesting that I agree with it or I disagree with it. But that is the argument that has been put forward over a period of time, that each of these applications were based on access out of Brox Lane, not based on this new access. That's just something to consider. That's all I ask members to think about. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Councillor Snow, again for your thoughts and comments. If I could go to Councillor Halley, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to say a few words as I'm not a member of your committee. Can I say also thank you to Mr. Nicholl and members of his committee for inviting a number of councillors to the site on Monday. I found the trip to Brox Lane along with councillors Howard, Kusneritis, Snow and Jay Sohi very interesting, very, very informative, and indeed gave me an opportunity to think about the various issues further. On the subject of the issues and the question of densification, I would invite the committee, if I may, to have regard to the NPPF, the National Planning Policy Framework 122 and also 123, and in particular 122B for Bertie, which deals specifically with local market conditions and viability, and 122D, which deals specifically with desirability of maintaining an area's prevailing character, including setting and residential gardens, and also 122E, which deals specifically with securing well-designed, attractive and healthy places. Now, of course, the SL2, which of course is reference to the site in the local plan, is relevant to your deliberations this evening, committee, but so too is the NPPF, which legally sits alongside the local plan, and I will ask you to have regard in particular to 122 and those subsections of the framework. In relation to viability, having been on site, it's clear to me that car parking, or the lack thereof as proposed, is a concern. Viability has to be viability for the residents on that site, but also surrounding that site. And I can see spilling over of cars parked on and in around Brock's Lane being a real issue, given the lack of parking as identified on the site. Goes to the question of viability, in my view. In relation to D, 122D, maintaining an area's prevailing character and setting, I am concerned about densification. I think it is too dense, 46 dwellings, including apartment blocks. I appreciate that we are looking at a minimum of 40 dwellings, no less, but of course it need be no more as well. You don't have to go beyond the 40 mark if you as a committee decide that is better and more in keeping with achieving appropriate densities. And then lastly, in relation to well-designed, attractive and healthy places, in my opinion, having been on site and looked at the plan, I do not believe that the dwellings as designed are well-designed nor attractive. And I'm mindful of the fact, having looked in and around that site, of the other buildings and the other properties in and around that area. So I do believe you can have regard to 122 in the NPPF, and I do believe that there are further arguments to be advanced in respect to both density and design. And for those reasons, I think there is much to be said for deferring this application, allowing residents and the planning officers and the developer to look again on the actual number of dwellings on the site, which I accept need to be brought forward, but at an appropriate amount, and also in respect of design. So I simply say there is an opportunity, indeed there is precedent for deferring an application like this, where there are opportunities to explore again the details of the application set against the planning framework. And so I would ask that the committee consider a deferral for those reasons. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to contribute.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hulley. My apologies, firstly, to Councillor Kousnaratis. I apologise, Councillor Kousnaratis, because I didn't see your hand up, and I noticed that you haven't actually spoken on this application yet, and you are obviously a member of this planning committee. So please accept my apologies for taking Councillor Hulley first instead of you, as I didn't see your hand. So anyway, the floor is yours, Councillor Kousnaratis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No need to apologise. Councillor Hulley had been waiting patiently, and I was actually quite keen to hear what he had to say anyhow. First off, I think the Vice Chair has slightly overstepped the boundary there with his last comments. Yes, if this was turned down, a planning inspector may not agree with us, but it's not for us as a committee to determine what a planning inspector will or will not find. And any member who decides to vote against this is free to do so, but would have to justify it and provide the reasons. So a little bit of caution on that one, please. I've really appreciated the comments from Councillor Snow on the carbon footprint side, and I have to say we as a council need to get our finger out on that and
move that forward, but not tonight. I too am concerned about the locally listed buildings, and I'm a little disappointed. I thought the ward members would have produced more of the history of Ottershaw, because it has a very complicated history going back to, I believe it's the 16th century. There was land disputes between Chertsey and I think it was Cobham, which was decided by the Pope. It was historically farming land that was then turned into nurseries, that was one of the few out of London areas that provided fresh flowers and vegetables to London markets, which I believe was just about in reach of the horse and cart. So that there is a huge amount of historical essence to this site. I'd like to point out as well that for many years, I've sat on this committee now, 14 years I think it is, and in my original days, the highways officers were required to attend our committee, and I would strongly urge that we move back to that, because constantly we have applications where we raise questions and we're unable to answer it because we already have just a written statement. And for myself, I preferred it when there was a highways officer present that could explain his actions to us. Everything from the use of tricks, which calculates traffic speeds across the Pennines and is then somehow converted into traffic allowment for Runnymede, has always confused me. But there, I too am very concerned about this new junction adding a fourth exit onto the main road, which I would like to have questioned the highways officer on. I do feel that there are excessive speeds there. I feel also the additional blocks of flats that have gone in are out of character for the village and the historical background of the village. And on that basis, as a committee member, I am entitled to make my decision however I feel on a place-shaping basis. Whilst I've enjoyed the debate, I think there's still a little bit more to go on it. So I'm going to sit back and listen to what is said. I was also one of the members that was in support of the smaller application that had massive village support, and the developer himself was keen to do, because it allowed him to build substantial houses, which would have allowed him to raise finance, I believe, to build affordable housing elsewhere in the borough, which I believe is A2's prime directive. Apart from that, I think I'll wait to see what people come back with.
Thank you, Councillor Kuzaratis. I have a hand up for Councillor Anderson-Bassey. The floor is yours, Councillor Anderson-Bassey.
Thank you, Chairman. I was coming back on the density item. I'll be very quick. I was originally coming back to Councillor Hulley's point, but I will also address Councillor Kuzaratis' point. My opinion is based on the evidence we have in front of us, and significant weight has to be given to that evidence. Councillor Kuzaratis said we cannot guess what an inspector would do. So I will again refer to the appeal decision on this site, and where 48 dwellings were mentioned, and I quote verbatim, 48 dwellings would have been, quote, efficient and acceptable use of land. So I can put significant weight behind what an inspector may or may not decide on the density. And the density we have is a minimum of 40, and an inspector's view that 48 dwellings would be an efficient and acceptable use of land. So that is why I suggest that if we decline, I'm not saying that other people won't have any other issues that they may want to decline or this application on, but if we decline on density, we will not, in my opinion, have any chance of winning that appeal. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I come back? Just bear with me, Councillor Kuzaratis. Thank you ever so much, Councillor Anderson-Bassey. Can I please remind councillors that this is the second application that we're looking to determine, and tete-a-tetes between councillors aren't helpful in trying to ensure that we have proper debate from a planning perspective. So can we please concentrate on the planning issues in front of us and ensure that the points that we make are valid and not repetition? Councillor Kazanakis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to slightly correct what was said there. I didn't say I disagreed with Councillor Bassi on his opinion of what the inspector said. What I said is that as Vice Chair, I think he's slightly overstepped and he should not be directing the committee with an opinion that states we can't win it.
Thank you, Councillor Kazanakis, but I do, bear with me, I do feel that Councillor Anderson Bassi rectified his point. I understand what you're trying to say, and can I just ask if you have any further additional points to make?
No, I'm quite happy with that as it is, but the committee must be free to make its own decisions, not be guided.
Right. We all have the report in front of us, and it's up to us to determine that report in our own independent thought and visions. Councillor Cressy.
Thank you, Chair. Again, so I'd like to suggest that we put forward a deferment option, if that is possible. Thank you.
So can I just confirm, Councillor Cressy, that you're looking to put a motion forward to defer?
That's exactly what I would like to do, Chair. Yes.
Okay. Just bear with me 2 seconds. Ashley Smith, are you there?
I am, Chairman. A motion to defer really needs to be accompanied with a good planning reason. The developer has listened to the residents. I have to say, the residents, in my experience, have been very reasonable and very good to deal with and very organised. And they made a number of points there, but the developer has made accommodations. They have put forward a scheme that is in line with previous appeal decisions and the allocation in the local plan, and unless there is a good planning reason, they have a right to a decision, and that is what all I want to say. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Ashley Smith. Okay, so Councillor Cressy, you put the motion forward then to defer. So we need to consider the rationale and the reasons behind that deferment.
Okay, so I can give you two reasons. I think the first reason is that there's a possibility of significantly reducing the negative impact on the listed building, and so I think that is a good enough reason for debate. I personally have heard that there are potentially 2 or 3 different options with regards to access and exit, and they have not been explored, and I think that is something that could potentially yield a reduction in the impact on Anningsley Cottage. The other issue, I think, is we need to address the key concerns of the community in terms of densification. Thank you.
So I'm just trying to make sense of what you just said there, Councillor Cressy. So you're looking to put a motion forward to defer on the possibility of a reduction in harm to the locally listed asset. Is that correct?
You've taken the words right out of my mouth, Chair. You are wonderful. Thank you.
Right. Okay. If we could just pass it up to Ashley Smith then, as far as advice on a planning reason to defer. Ashley Smith, you've heard the proposal there from Councillor Cressy. Can we have your opinion, please, on the or further updated or perhaps better wording on the deferral?
Yes. Well, the first thing I would say is that the scheme before the council is this scheme. It's not an alternative scheme. Either the access isn't harmful or it is harmful, and they've put forward the scheme. We've heard the reasons why other accesses aren't as suitable, things such as the requirement from the developer earlier on, such as the requirement that 25 dwellings or less for off Brox Lane. But at the end of the day, they own that land. They have a right to put the access wherever they want, and unless it's unacceptable in planning terms, we need to make a decision on that. With regard to the densification issue, we've discussed the previous appeals ad nauseum. We've discussed the local plan requirements, and it is going to be in excess of 40 dwellings on this scheme. So I don't know what I'd be directed to try and achieve on here that is such a departure from 46 dwellings. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. We've got Councillor Kuzmaratis' hand up. Let's just hear from Councillor Kuzmaratis.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cressy's proposing the deferral. I assume the policy is that it would require a seconder. Prior to moving to that, I would ask Mr. Smith a question, please. Could you please describe the risk of going to the deferral, where we stand on the basis of non-determination, and what risk that would bring to any conditions we've applied to this application? Would we lose the right to control the conditions?
Well, you would if there was an appeal against non-determination. That would be an issue for an inspector. I'm not aware of the particular risk on this site, non-determination or not, but as I've already flagged, they have a right to a decision, and there's only point in deferring if it's going to achieve something. And given that we've got a scheme which is broadly policy compliant, and we're not hearing issues that nobody's advancing a refusal on any particular ground, I don't know what I'm tasked with negotiating on, because it's completely unclear that there's harm being generated. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much.
We'd say there's a high risk.
Councillor Kuzmaratis, through the chair, please. What was your point?
Oh, sorry, Mr. Chairman. My brain was running ahead of me. Would you describe this as a high risk of non-determinant? Because I've heard plenty of reasons so far.
I think, Councillor Kuzmaratis, it's trying to predetermine what a developer may or may not do is a very difficult question to answer.
Probability, what we do, not what they do.
Probability of non-determination is something that could happen, but whether it will happen, I think perhaps we all need to make our minds up on that as individuals, rather than try and get a definitive answer on something that may or may not happen. But obviously, as I'm sure you're aware, it is a possibility. I do feel that we have a duty to determine an application.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I was just looking to hear Ashley's professional opinion. But it's not a problem. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Smith?
The only thing, if it was deferred, I think there is a very significant risk that this would simply come back to the planning committee in the exact same form it is now, and we'd be having the exact same debate in a month or two's time, because I don't feel like, from the debate tonight, or my professional opinion, that I have the tools to demand improvements to the scheme from the developer for the reasons that have been set out this evening, and therefore we'd be simply pushing the problem down the road. In January we'll be having the same debate on the same scheme, and we'll have wasted a month. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. Thank you. As I say, my opinion on this is that we have a duty to determine this application. I've listened to the debate intently, and it has been a very well-constructed debate, and I think there's been some interesting points made. We have had a proposal to defer from Councillor Cressy. However, I'm questioning the grounds of which that deferral could take place. He does have his hand up, so let's hear again from Councillor Cressy.
Thanks, Chair. I think Ashley did say that if access is harmful, I think he mentioned that. Well, I would say that access through 183 Broggs Road is harmful. It definitely does. In my opinion, it does not conserve or enhance the existing heritage sites, and I think that that is really the hub of it at the end of the day, and we should do what we can to make sure that we can conserve and enhance the heritage site. So I think that is a reason for deferral. If you can reduce the volume of traffic exiting the site. So let's take just an example. If you had two exits, you could end up with reducing the volume of traffic coming out of the site onto Broggs Road, and you could then move other traffic onto Broggs Lane. That, in actual fact, would reduce and it would help in conserving and enhancing the heritage site. So these are options which are totally available but have not yet been discussed, and I think that that is grounds enough for deferment.
Thank you, Councillor Cressy. Mr. Smith, you have your hand up.
Sorry, Chair, it's a legacy hand.
Legacy hand. Councillor Orenshaw. Thank you, Chair. Just to come back on the thing about, it's just got on mine now, I was trying to think about. I've forgotten that, so sorry about that, Chair. I'll have to call off. Thank you, Councillor Orenshaw. Councillor Mullins.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think that the access to the site via the back of Anningsley Cottage would be better than it being by the front. I think it would protect the heritage asset better. I think having the access down Brox Lane, which is, I know, not the proposal before us, would harm the view of this cottage, which the beauty of it is from the front and not from the back. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mullins. However, we do need to consider the application as in front of us, and obviously that is not the current access route. Whether you're content with our access route or not is obviously a decision you need to make yourself when voting, but we do need to look at the application as it currently stands with the access as it currently is. Councillor Orenshaw, your hand is back up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Sorry about that, brain slip. I was just thinking about, in the historic, they have had an agreement betwixt the developer and the residents for a smaller development, and I'm just wondering why we cannot go back to that. Why do we have to go forward in this 40 when there was an agreement with 12 or 14, I think it was, a few years ago, which this council decided not to pass? Thank you, Chair.
If I may, Councillor Orenshaw, we have a duty to determine in the application in front of us, as the local planning authority and the planning committee, we can't look to determine applications that aren't in front of us. This is the application that is in front of us, and this is the application that we need to determine.
Okay.
Councillor Howarth.
Yeah, very quickly, Chair. Just on Councillor Mullins' point, I fear that we may have misunderstood her. I think what she was saying was that the application before us is actually better in terms of the heritage asset than it would have been were we to have had a different application which would have taken us in through Brox Lane, which some people have argued would be a better proposal. So I think she was actually talking about the application in front of us. It's a small point, but in terms of the discussion and the way the discussion's going, I thought we might want to just clarify that.
Thank you, Councillor Howarth. Councillor Broadhead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to point out that Brox Lane is a private road, and there have been very many people objecting to using Brox Lane because they owned it and they didn't want traffic passing their front doors. So therefore, unless they got permission, if the developer got permission to use Brox Lane, the residents would block it anyway. So by coming out into Brox Road, I believe that's the answer to this problem. And we could be able to get on with this planning application without further ado.
Thank you, Councillor Broadhead. Your hand is still up, Councillor Broadhead. Councillor, no, down. Okay. Right. I can't see any further hands. We have had a motion in from Councillor Cressy. However, this motion has not been seconded. And on that basis, I'll move this to the vote. Councillor Anderson Bassey.
Mr. Chair, thank you.
Oh, Councillors and Arthurs?
Sorry, you haven't asked if anyone wished to second it.
Well, I've stated that we haven't got a seconder.
Okay.
So I'm inviting
I've given an opportunity for a seconder to come forward.
No hands, Chairman?
No hands. Okay. Councillor Anderson-Bassey.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, that has been well and truly debated. I would therefore move, as set down, RU20/0675. You have the conditions on pages 65 to 70. The informatives are on 70 to 72. And please take note of the addendum, pages 2 and to 4. Do I have a seconder, please?
Very happy to second that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Howarth. Emmanuel, are you there? Emmanuel, are you there?
Oh, sorry, Chairman. I was reaching accidentally. Thank you. I'll call your names out as they appear to me on the list, which is alphabetically. If you could confirm whether you're voting for, against, or registering an abstention. And I'll start with Councillor Anderson-Bassey.
For, please, Emmanuel.
Thank you. Councillor Broadhead.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Chowdhury.
Am I allowed to vote on this?
No.
You should register an abstention, Councillor Chowdhury.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Cressy.
Against.
Councillor Mrs. Gillam.
For.
Councillor Howarth.
For.
Councillor King.
Reluctantly for.
Councillor Kuzaraitis.
Against.
Councillor Miss Mullins.
For.
Councillor Newty.
Sorry, dropped off there. Yes, for.
Thank you. Councillor Snow.
Reluctantly for.
Councillor Miss Surrey.
Reluctantly for.
Councillor Mrs. White.
Yeah, reluctantly for.
Councillor Willingale.
For.
Councillor Wilson.
Abstain.
Thank you. I'll hand you over to Bernard, who will announce the results.
Chairman, the voting was as follows. In favour of authorising the grant of planning permission, 11, against 2, abstentions 2.
Thank you very much, Bernard, for that confirmation. Once again, thank you, members, for your time and your debate on that item. If we could now move on, please, with the agenda, which is now on to item RU20/12.